Yoga teachers here in the UK where I am, with over 24 years of teaching experience. So Kirsten has founded the Bath Yoga Centre in 2000 with her husband Richard, who is also an Iyengar Yoga teacher. And what I love and I find interesting about Kirsten is she's got a background in experimental psychology, as well as being a educational psychologist before pursuing a career in Iyengar Yoga. So I met Kirsten at the World Yoga Festival, and I did my first Iyengar Yoga class under her guidance, and I really enjoyed learning about the precision and the alignment emphasis during Iyengar Yoga. So those were the two highlights for me about Iyengar Yoga, and I understand it's such a deeper form after reading these two books by B.K.S Iyengar himself, Light on Life and Light on Yoga. So I would love Kirsten to more elaborate and share with you guys like the benefits of Iyengar Yoga, and also not only on the body but also on the psyche, especially with. So I'm just waiting for Kirsten to come on. Hopefully this works. I've accepted. Hi.
Hello. Sorry about that. Slight technical hit.
That's fine. It works. It's working. Except you're sideways.
Oh, am I? Oh, right. Hang on. I ought to know how to do this, but I don't. Okay, hang on. Does that work? Yeah.
Yes.
It's a bit low down now, though. Hang on. I'll have to. Oops. Sorry. I had it set up for the other way, so I'm not quite sure how to do it this way.
That's okay. Hi, Angel. Hi, Martin. So while you're figuring that out, I'll tell people about the concepts of Iyengar Yoga that I know. I was mentioning before that it's very like alignment focused, very precision focused. But I know there's a lot of discipline involved as well in Iyengar Yoga. And in one of his books, he talks about, strategy to practice and approach the practice and the physical practice, which I thought was nice to break it down for beginners. Oh, that's working. Yes. Hi, Angel.
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. So welcome. This is your first IG Live, I believe. So thank you so much for taking the leap and having the faith in technology to come on.
I'm not sure if technology's got the faith in me, but anyway, let's see.
I do.
Okay, good.
So, Kirsten, can you please share, firstly, what differentiates Iyengar Yoga in particular from other styles of yoga?
Well, I don't feel particularly qualified to talk about other styles of yoga because I have gone into Iyengar Yoga and really only ever very slightly dabbled in other schools. So I feel I can only talk about what I know something of, which is Iyengar Yoga. But I think you're right. It's we were talking before about it being a traditional method, and it really is traditional. It's rooted in tradition. But our Guruji said something once which I thought was interesting, which was something like, I'm paraphrasing, but something like, sorry, I hope the screen's still there. It keeps going off for me. That British people are not at all traditional, but very conservative, whereas Indians are very traditional and not conservative. And I think that sort of sums up his approach to yoga, perhaps, that it's very much rooted in tradition. It's connected with the heart, of that yoga tradition, but it was radical, not conservative. It was a radical approach to taking yoga to the masses, because traditionally the sadhaka had to go to to find the guru, maybe even to the Himalayas, you know. Whereas our Guruji took yoga really to the masses worldwide and to all people, not just, you know, the rich and powerful, but everybody was invited. And he also took a very sort of so what I want to say there is he brought it. He didn't stay just in a conservative mode. He brought it to the masses, but he kept that connection with the spirit of the tradition and the heart of the tradition, and that's very important. There is a thread. It's not just, you know, you can't just leave that tradition. And he said that he was when he practiced, he was a philosopher, but, you know, when he taught, he was a scientist. When he demonstrated, he was an artist, and when he practiced, he was a philosopher. So it's very much rooted in the philosophy, yoga philosophy, essential. But it was adapted to the age that he was in and that we are in. And so he took a very scientific approach. And so that means our system is it's structured, it's safe, it's step by step, it's verifiable. And while still keeping that connection with the tradition. So what else do I want to say? I think there's this idea that, you know, he was, in my view, Guruji, Iyengar, B.K.S Iyengar, was a yogi, and he was able to bring himself to our level in order to teach us. And so he was, you know, able to teach us despite our limitations, but it's important to understand they weren't his limitations. And so a great teacher that you are just sort of pontificating regardless of what.
Sorry, Kirsten, it just cut out for the last 20 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
So you said about our limitations, and then after that, can you please?
Our limitations were not his limitations, but he was able to adapt the way he taught the subject in order so that we could pick it up despite our limitations. And you know, that's, I think, also a sign of the greatness, because it was just not standing there pontificating about keeps cutting out, I don't know why, about what he knew, regardless of who was listening and whether they could understand what he was saying. But he adapted it in order to get it across. But it's important also to understand that you can't change essential yoga. Essential yoga is essential yoga, and that's what it is. But how you go about imparting it may have to be adapted according to the society and the times and the people, you know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it reminds me immediately of an Albert Einstein quote where if you can't break it down to explain it to a simple person or to a child, then you haven't mastered the concept.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why actually I think sometimes being a teacher is really helpful for one's practice, because it helps you really, you know, sort of tussle with it and work things out. You're kind of forced into that in many ways, you know.
That's right. They say that also reminds you, like, when you learn it, but when you teach it, you consolidate that knowledge within yourself, so you really understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like that he has given also a way of, like, a guideline, a scientific guideline, and whether one chooses to understand it or not, it's like electricity, you know, it works. You turn on the light switch, it works.
Absolutely.
It's a science,
Absolutely.
like you said.
Yes, and it's, you know, much of what we're dealing with in yoga is kind of the indescribable and you know, the unexplainable. It's something which ultimately every person has to experience themselves. It can't be, you know, another person can guide you, may help you, they may use words that help you or activities that help you, but basically each person finding out and directly
Okay, that's better. It says each person finding out and going through that journey. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and what do you think would be some of the benefits of Iyengar yoga? I mean, I was talking earlier about just purely from the practice itself, it's very precision and alignment based. So for someone who's mathematical and scientific, they can almost have a guidance of the lines and structures of how the body should be as a baseline. But that's one of the benefits I've experienced from your class,
Okay.
understanding that.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't keep cutting off now. My screen keeps dropping out, and I don't know if that means it's cutting off at your end, is it, or not?
Yeah, sometimes it's just like
I'm
it's a
sorry.
little
I
flicker.
don't know why it's doing that, but I have to keep just pressing the button. That's all I can do. Yeah,
That's it.
I think, again, if we talk about the benefits of Iyengar Yoga, I can't really speak comparatively because it's really what's the thing that I know, and not compared to other things. But I would say it is an excellent method. It's very precise, as you say, it's safe, it's systematic, it's structured. So, you're going to learn in a kind of logical way. You're going to learn logically, step by step, safely. But it's a complete method. It's not just because we begin with asanas and what appears to be physical. One shouldn't be misled by that and thinking, oh well, it's about that, and because that gives great benefits physically, it gives benefits. It might sort out your back problem, or it might help you age better, or it might help you with your stress. That's not what it is for. Those are all side benefits, and they're great, and we all like that. And that often is what keeps us coming, especially when we're a beginner. But it goes more fundamentally than that. So if you're really interested in yoga, it will really take you deep into the subject. So I think that's great. For me, it was the path, and that's not to disparage other paths. I mean, it's just for me, it felt the right way to go about it, and it's given me so much, for which I'm very grateful.
And that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you at the start, actually, was can you please share your personal story of what led you along the path of Iyengar yoga?
Okay, so I say it was chance really, or good luck. I had some notion of yoga when I was a little girl. I remember going to somebody's birthday party, and this girl was given a book about yoga, and I thought, oh, that looks
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
But apart from that, I never came across it, and there was no opportunity to participate in it or anything like that. But when I finished my first degree in my postgraduate studies, I was quite keen to do something non-academic. So I got the prospectus from my local adult education college and had a look through, and I saw there was this thing called Iyengar Yoga. And I'd heard of the yoga, and I thought, well, yes, I've got some idea. That sounds interesting. I had no idea what Iyengar was. So I thought, well, I'll just ignore that Iyengar bit. I'll just go with the yoga. And I signed up, and straight away I was pretty much hooked in it. I found it very, very engaging at all levels, not only bodily, which I was, keen to do something like exercise and have a change from a desk job and all of that, but also, excuse me, it engaged me intellectually, mentally. It was challenging. And I thought, I just felt they were onto something, and I was keen to get on board really. And so I very much, I was keen, as a beginner is keen, and so I would turn up to class very, keenly, and seldom missed a class, even though I had a very demanding job, and sometimes I was very tired when I got home from work. And I can remember, trudging through snow to get to the class, and thankfully the teacher also trudged through the snow. And I just really felt it was very important for me to do it. And gradually I realized that if I practiced after I got home from work, my evening went a lot better. Or if I practiced before I went to work, my day went a lot better. So rather than being a sort of an expenditure of time, it was an investment in a way, because it gave me a lot more than I was having to sort of invest, if you see what I mean. And gradually I started going to yoga days, and I realized, oh gosh, there would be 100 people in the room all into this, and they were all shapes and sizes and ages, and I liked that inclusivity. It wasn't just one type, and there was all this enthusiasm about it. And then after a few years, Mr. Iyengar came to the UK. It was 1993, and it was an event called Euro Yoga at Crystal Palace. And there were about, I think about 1,000 people participating in this. So he was teaching these mega classes, and it was really awesome, and also quite terrifying at times, because he was, he was very, demanding as a teacher, and demanded your full attention. But it was, a wonderful thing to have participated in. And in fact, I was thinking the other day, I was thinking about this, that being in the tea room in between sessions, and we were all crowded together, if you can remember what being crowded in a room is like. And I turned around. Yeah, you remember, yeah. I turned around, and Guruji was right behind me, Mr. Iyengar, as I called him then. And I was very surprised, because he was so much smaller than I thought, and normal, like he was laughing and joking, and just having his tea with everyone else. There were no airs and graces, and he was smaller, because in my mind he was this giant. The way his presence, his teaching presence, was immense. But then he didn't carry airs and graces. It didn't spoil him, and I thought, well, that's a very good model of how to go about it, because nothing you do should be spoiling you. We're supposed to be trying to improve and not get worse as a person. So, and that is a bit of a pitfall for teachers, I think, that you can fall into that.
Can you say that again? What is the pitfall of teachers?
For teachers, that you can sort of fall into a thing of being a celebrity or a star, or thinking there's something very special, and that identity of teacher is only relevant when you're actually teaching, and the rest of the time you're a person living, and should be trying to live well, conduct yourself well, like we all should. That's so it's I think it's something to be aware of. And so after that, a few years after that, I started to go to travel to India to study at the Ramamani Iyengar Memorial Yoga Institute, called RIMI in the Iyengar circles, which is where Mr. Iyengar's institute is. And I've been there over 20 times now. I can't remember. The last time was March last year, and that trip was cut short because of COVID-19 intervening. But it was it's been very, very important for me, the going to India to study, and with the Iyengars, and so Guruji and his daughter Gita ji, his son Prashant ji, his granddaughter Abhijata, and it's so much a part of me, that, and it feels like a home from home, that is part of my home. So a slightly long answer, sorry, and a slightly winding path, but I can say it's given me so much. It's a very, very generous thing, is yoga, and I'm very grateful, and it's so much a part of me. I can't separate it out from everything else.
And it's wonderful to meet a teacher who is trained directly from Iyengar himself, and from the institute, and you've met him even in
I've met him, but there are many people who had a much longer relationship with him than me, my husband, and other people, had, because I only came across him first of all in the 90s, and he's already an old man by then, and but yes, I feel very privileged. I feel privileged to have lived in his time, and to have come across his teaching directly through his family and through his teachers, the network of teachers worldwide, so yes, and a very awesome and special person.
What I took away from that is, no matter how much knowledge you gain and share, it's always important to be humble and kind, and be able to break down the teachings to students in a way that it's edible and digestible at their level. So that
Yeah,
will reinforce the understanding of yoga, not only within yourself, but also with the people you are teaching. And
absolutely.
also the fact that you've been back to over 20 times to India, the motherland of yoga, right, is shows I feel like having studied yoga, being Indian myself of ethnic origin, I don't think even I've been there 20 times.
Oh,
But I
really?
think I know, yeah, I wasn't born in India, and I think there is a beauty like I learned my yoga not in India, but I would love to do a yoga in the future to love to do a training in the motherland, because I think there's an essence of the land where you learn that the energy of those grounds that you absorb during the experience, and you take that with you. And well, that's what I feel from having traveled now, a bit more traveled in the world, that if I had a choice of where I would learn, where the location itself is important. Yeah.
I think
So
it is
exciting.
important. You're right, it is important. And I think because also often things get lost in translation, if you know what I mean. I don't
Mm,
mean just the words, but the sort of culture
mm,
and that side of things. And, sadly, often yoga's become a very commercial subject, a marketable
mm,
thing, or people have tried to make it such. And that's a shame. And but that may even be the case in India. And
mm.
it depends where you go, doesn't it? And
Yes.
who you learn with. And ultimately, there is this, what you're searching for, what we're all searching for, is within ourselves. So you don't
Mm.
actually need to go anywhere.
It's
It's a journey
gold.
where you don't have to go
Exactly.
anywhere, which is perfect for lockdown. Yeah. But
Yes.
but yes, of course, it is inspiring to go to India, and
Yeah.
I am very grateful to India.
Yeah. I agree. Like what you seek is within yourself already. You don't need to seek
Yes,
externally. But if you're off track and you need to get back on track, it's a great way to start.
absolutely, absolutely, for
So
sure.
thank you for sharing that journey and personal gains as well from your experience. Now, for those who are I would like to ask you about the psychology question as well, because with your extensive background in educational psychology and studying experimental psychology as well, how do you see, you can talk about your experience if you like it, as yoga relating to the human psyche or psychology?
Okay, so firstly, I have to sort of preface this with a little disclaimer, because I'm quite old now. So my degree was a long time ago. About 35 years ago, I finished my experimental psychology degree, and it was just one degree. I didn't do a PhD or, all of that. But I do sort of keep in touch with the psychology world and read the journal, and I did do the educational psychology. So I know a bit about it, but I'm perhaps a bit out of date, I would say. But anyway, having given that,
Mm,
I think basically, you see, yoga is psychology, and I didn't realize that at the beginning. When I started yoga, I thought I was doing something different. But
mm,
I've come to realize it's actually, for me at least, it's one thread. It's because you could say, well, psychology and yoga, they're both concerned with consciousness. And that's
mm,
really what, yoga is about.
mm,
And so I do see the yoga as a continuation, really, a natural progression for me, but more deep, more profound study. Because what I found with the psychology at the end of my degree, I remember, you do your finals and everything has to come together, and you're trying to figure out what was all this about, these 3 years. And I felt somehow there was something very lacking from it, and something essential about humanity and the human
mm,
condition. It lacked a sort of spiritual angle for me, or what the essence of a person. And so it's kind of nuts and boltsy, experiments and so on.
mm,
So it was a great education. It's very good. It's a very good grounding, and a discipline. and I learned a lot, and I don't mean to disparage it. And Western psychology, I think, has given a lot to the world, but I do have found it to be limited. And so I did experimental psychology, which is the sort of sciencey end of psychology and experiments and stuff, nuts and bolts. And there's also humanistic psychology, which I've looked into a bit, which is more to do with more subjective, but still there's something very special about yoga psychology, which those psychologies I don't think discuss. And I was thinking about a quote from Guruji from his book Light on Life, I think it was, and it was, the light that yoga sheds on life is something special. It is transformative, yes. It does not just change the way we see things, but it transforms the person who sees. So it's very transformative and at a very deep level. It's not just cosmetic transformation, superficial, the outside or the outer layers of one, but at a very deep and profound level, it's about transformation there. And ultimately, of course, transcendence. And I feel, I mean, Western psychology is relatively young compared to yoga, which is thousands and thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And Western psychology maybe 130, 50 years old, something like that. So, of course, it's in its infancy. And but so for me, it made more sense to, I think what I was interested in, what attracted me to psychology, I find more in yoga than in psychology.
That is so interesting, because I have a fascination in psychology as well, just as an adult. I haven't professionally studied it, but for me, yoga is therapy. It's my own, I'm essentially my own therapist through like the yoga practice. And I practice myself, like, you know, sometimes in a class, but usually for me. And that's my own experience. I'm not recommending, just disclaimer, I'm not recommending this to anyone.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it is. I mean, it changes us, and it should be changing us. And I think when we're practicing, you know, that ought to be a sort of a bit of a litmus test. Well, is this, you know, am I becoming a better person? Is the way I live my life better for me? I mean, I might not be a perfect person, I can assure you I'm not, but but am I better than I would have been had I not practiced this? And that's important. And at a fundamental level, not just, you know, am I fitter? Do I look younger? Or can I bend and do this stretch and impress somebody with that? But is it, you know, is it changing me inside? You know, in a sense of, or getting rid of the, you know, all the coverings that are in the way of and what the real me that's inside, that is pure, you know, balanced, tranquil, serene, and you know, finding that, tuning into that, you know.
I agree. Like, I'm not perfect either, and I know that no matter what my day is, I'm gonna try to get the best out of it. I'm gonna just try, right? Some days I wake up and, you know, like everyone, you know, feel sad, feel happy, things in your life, external situations, but no matter what, I'm just gonna try and keep going.
Absolutely.
And yoga helps transform and move, from my own personal experience. I don't know the science behind it, but I know if it's lasted so many years, I don't necessarily, I'm seeking now to understand, but, you know, it worked for me, and it's been so healing. So I'd love to share that with others as well, who may think that yoga is just a physical practice, but delving deeper, it can help yourself transform and transmute whatever you're going through in the direction you like to create for your own life.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, definitely. And so I'm just getting distracted by some of the questions. Somebody's saying, is behind Patanjali? It is Patanjali, yes. This is Sage Patanjali behind.
Yes. Kartu, yes, he asks often very good questions. And I think he had a question before as well. He said, what do you think about transcendental state?
I don't feel I know anything about it. Sorry. I'm sorry, I don't know. I only know. I mean, one is the way I understand it, excuse me, in yoga, there is this transformation at a fundamental level of the psyche, the consciousness, in such a way that ultimately one transcends. I haven't transcended. I don't know.
Thank you for that honest and raw answer.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think
one gets glimpses, often in practice. I don't know if you find this, but glimpses of bliss or a super serene state or whatever. I think those those we want to make more of that and have more of that in our way of living. Equanimity and tranquility and neutrality and these sort of yogic, what I'd call yogic qualities. And then eventually, so that becomes one's way of being, but it's hard, in real life. There we are, something happens that upsets us in some way and we can be thrown off balance, but we are trying to maintain or develop a state of balance in our consciousness.
I found that state, like, for me, sometimes it's very difficult just to sit there and meditate and clear my head. I find it when I'm moving through a yoga practice, that helps me. And then to get into that state, and sometimes I get ideas that I'd like to implement into my life or whatever problems that I'm trying to solve. It happens during the flow. And then after I've flowed and almost, me being a kapha, predominantly my quality, and Ayurvedic quality, I need to sweat, I need to move, and then I feel a state of bliss and peace and almost like, oh, I'm in La La Land. And I've created this myself.
Yeah, and you can get this comes through practice, these states, and for sure. And if anybody thinks that asana practice, for example, is merely a physical thing, then they don't really understand what it is. I mean, it seems physical at first, and when you're a beginner, to a large extent it is. There's a lot of technique to learn, you're using your body, you're doing stuff, but gradually that doing has to reduce, and you realize it's more about what's happening, about things that happen rather than I am doing. And then it's about witnessing those things. So it's sort of taking a step back and being aware and sensitive and witnessing the happenings. And because we've got to sort of take the I out of it. If you say I am doing yoga, it doesn't really actually make sense as a statement, because the I has to be dissolved, subdued a little, because it's a nuisance. The ego, the I, is a nuisance and it's a spoiler. So but yes, I think so gradually a teacher is guiding you, and you're guiding yourself in your practice to find that witnessive state. So I think that may be something like what you're saying, where you're in you're kind of, what do people say sometimes? They say flow, or a little like that. I mean, that's one sort of there is a sort of, Guruji talked about active meditation in an asana practice, but there is also, of course, the classical traditional meditation sitting, Padmasana is different. But that's
Padmasana sort of is sitting pose, for those who don't know, like sitting in
lotus or any sitting
any
pose,
cross-legged sitting.
Or even virasana, I think you could do.
But like sitting on their knees, like,
yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just saying in case people didn't know.
Good idea.
Just sitting, essentially, just sitting in any position that you can.
Yeah. So I can't remember where we were now with that conversation.
Oh no, and I think it reminded me, like, what I liked about what you said about dissolving the I. It reminded me of this little quote that I said somewhere, which is, if you want to be happy in life, switch off the ego, turn on your soul.
Yeah,
And I thought,
absolutely.
oh, that's a nice way.
It is nice. And
Yeah.
I like the idea of Prashantji, Guruji's son said one time, it really struck a chord with me about, it's like you've got to tune in the radio, you know, like old fashioned radios you had a knob.
Yes.
Young people know about this sort of
Yeah.
tuning, but and you've got to tune into the wavelength, and that wavelength, you know, of peacefulness, serenity, and you know, the essential you is there all the time. It's just
Mm,
we're tuned into other stuff, you know, we're listening to all the noise and all the
mm,
temptations that are out there,
mm,
getting pulled by those, which ultimately won't satisfy us, you know.
That is so true. It's such a distraction
Mm,
from true happiness and satisfaction, which is really within
absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know,
And yeah,
go on.
bringing so speaking of Iyengar yoga and now the practical aspects of it. Oh, sorry, before I go that, you mentioned the light and life in
Ah,
your,
yeah.
and what are some key points or key, because it's quite, I mean, it's a good read. I think it's his second book. The Light on Yoga is the first one, I believe, and
Yeah,
Light on
it's
Life.
not his second book. I think it would probably be about his 20th book or
Oh,
something. And
okay, my
it's written
apologies.
quite late. He wrote
Okay,
many books. I can't remember, maybe 30 or 40 books, possibly
yeah,
more.
wow.
But yes, this was written quite late in his life, and
Mm,
is in some ways a culmination of it. And it's also, like you say, it's very well written. It's very accessible,
mm,
and so I think it's a really helpful book for a beginner in yoga, because you can kind of latch on to what he's talking about. It doesn't feel too removed. So it's about living, you know, and that's what yoga is about. It should, yes, it's about self-realization, but
mm,
along the way we should be living well.
mm,
And so it's a guide to that, really. And so there's some beautiful quotes in it, really. Those are my takeaways. And I mean, it's absolutely cram-packed with beautiful, deep, profound quotes. So I was thinking of those last night, and we were talking about this. And the
yeah.
one I really like is that he said, "Do not think of yourself as a small, compressed, suffering thing, but think of yourself as graceful and expanding, no matter how unlikely it may seem at the time." And I think that's a beautiful quote. And I kind of think of that sometimes if I do a pose like Ardha Chandrasana, it has that graceful, expanding, here I am,
Yeah.
you know, sort
Ardha
of
Chandrasana is half moon
half
pose.
moon pose, yeah.
Half moon,
And
yes.
sort of that very openness, you know, and
Mm.
yes, and one tries to be graceful, not always succeeding. There's quite a bit of falling over in yoga, isn't there? And
Yeah, there is.
along the way. But another one I like was a simple one. Yoga is a mirror to look at ourselves from within.
Mm.
And, you know, these statements, they seem very simple, but they're actually very profound. And so that
Mm.
idea that we are looking at ourselves, the self is looking at the self, sort of thing.
Mm.
And it's fascinating. It's kind of mind-blowing as well, all that sort of stuff. And there was something else. Yes, he said, as we explore the soul, it is important to remember that this exploration will take place within nature or body, for that is where and what we are. So we shouldn't disparage the body, because we are existing on this material plane, and the body is our instrument of investigation to find
Mm.
ourselves within. And so although we're using that instrument, and as I say, it looks like a physical endeavor, it's not a physical endeavor. It's using physicality as a way in, as an instrument.
Mm.
And another one I liked about breath, he said, breath is the vehicle of consciousness. And so by its slow, measured observation and distribution, we learn to tug our attention away from external desires towards a judicious, intelligent awareness. And so so he's explaining how the breath is so profoundly important in yoga practice as a kind of a way of connecting with the deeper consciousness, which I find fascinating. And along the way, you know, you feel good, you feel better, you feel, but that's not what it's for. It makes you feel better, you are better, but that's then to be used to continue that exploration deeper.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those quotes. And I think you're right. You can spend time like philosophizing or delving into the meaning, deeper meaning of these quotes. And I like that he's written this life book later in his life. So he's really experienced yoga and transcended off the mat this practice. And
Absolutely.
so it's really a way of being, a way of doing, a way of moving and
Absolutely.
acting, flowing. And like what you said about the darkness, the first point you said, you know, even when you're suffering, don't think you're suffering. Feel like you're expanding gracefully. I think that is such a beautiful quote. What comes to my mind is, you know, the universe is created from dark matter. It's not light, right? Even though he says light on yoga, it's funny, ironically, the title of his book, but there's so much darkness in the universe, and I think one should appreciate that and grow gracefully through that darkness into the light.
Absolutely, and that's what a guru does. You know, the one who removes the darkness.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
so a guru is a very special person. You know, like Guruji was a guru. I'm not a guru. I'm just a teacher. So that's, but you know, you try as much as possible to share what you've been able to capture. But yes, they're radiating light. And Gita, Mr. Iyengar's daughter, said a lovely thing before she passed away, which was that, you know, because people said, well, something about living in her father's shadow. And she said, but I didn't live in my father's shadow. I lived in his light. And that's, you know, that's lovely. I just think it's beautiful.
That is such a wonderful compliment and a legacy to have. And I think such a nice way to, you know, live life as well. If you can, you know, say or give that experience to someone, that live in my light, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and also then, you know, there's, as it says in the Yoga Sutras, you know, it's yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of consciousness. So the stilling of the fluctuations, so that the radiance of the self with a capital S, the soul, shines through. You know, so we've all got our own light, and so part of it is revealing that, you know, and letting it there be in its splendor.
My favorite gospel song I was listening to, "This Little Light of Mine." I'm gonna let it shine.
Why not? Yeah.
I know there's a lot of that yoga chitta vitri nirodha. I believe that's the one. To still the fluctuations of the mind, but infusing it with the gospel music because I like that.
Absolutely.
You know.
But the sutra after that is, you know, what's it? Something like Tada drashtahu swarupe vastanam. Apologies for my terrible pronunciation, but it's that. It's why these fluctuations have to cease or be, you know, reduced, so that the self, the true self, the seer, can manifest or be revealed. You know? So yeah, that's the third sutra.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I can't remember the third sutra that well, but that's so beautifully articulated. I think, you know, the deep.
This was sorry to interrupt, but this was Patanjali. It was amazing. You know that there's so much in those Yoga Sutras, 196 terse statements, but with so much in there, and it's absolutely mind blowing. You know.
Thank you for sharing the key points from those books. And I believe you have a book. You've written a few articles yourself and publications, I believe.
Oh, just a few small articles. Yes, I haven't written a book or anything like that. Yeah.
Can you please share where people can find these articles?
Oh gosh. Well, probably the best places to look is we have a magazine called Iyengar Yoga News, which is our twice yearly magazine in the Iyengar Yoga world, which the National Association publishes, and I think it's online. Occasionally, people have put bits in other journals or books. Sorry, I'm being vague. I don't I don't really keep track of those
Promote
things.
yourself, yeah.
Um,
Because it's so wise that your interpretations, your experience of going there over 20 times. So, yeah, share.
I wrote a guide. I wrote a guide to Pune. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but that was about how to sort of how you might not make terrible faux pas that you might, because when people go to, when you go, if you're a decent person, you go to another country, you don't want to offend people. You don't want to make mistakes, and often you can make mistakes just because you don't realise there's a thing, And so it was a sort of trying to explain certain things about how to behave.
Conduct myself,
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe you wrote an article on whether to use props or not to use props. Oh,
possibly, yes. That may have been my husband actually who wrote that.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Richard, yeah. I wrote one also on puja and my experiences of as a non-Hindu doing puja. That was long ago. I wrote that, and that was in the magazine. And that's an important aspect for me. Is that sort of my nature? I think is a kind of I like the devotional stuff. I like kirtan and chanting, and so that side of things also I feel is important. I like to begin with a small puja. And
do you do that every day, or how often do you do it?
I try. I couldn't honestly say I do it every day, but I know, again, it's like yoga practice. It's the right way to start the day, I think. Try to because I think it's important.
Yes.
So, but I say that, as I say, I'm a non-Hindu and I don't know a great deal about it, but I feel it's important.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, I didn't come from a Hindu background, but I like the idea behind a puja as well, and it's a sacred practice for the well-being and energy as well in the room that it creates, I find.
I think so as well, and also getting some sense of perspective and one's sort of position and reverence, I think, is an important quality to cultivate, and humility, and so it's important for that, and seeking blessings, and we all we can all do with those.
Yes. My mom always prays for me. We're from I was born in a Catholic family, and every day she'd like say, "I'm saying a prayer for you, my daughter." I'm like, "Thank you, I appreciate."
That's very nice. I do the same for my son.
Oh, that's so sweet. That is so sweet. And every day I've been in this country, she's literally sent me a message, a prayer, or saying a rosary. And I think no matter what the avenue is, the intention and the practice of doing that is beneficial. And if anyone wants to pray for me, I'm like, thank you so much. I appreciate it and would love to.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's something you're connecting there with something, and it's helpful.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing like a Western that it's also benefited you for such an Eastern practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yoga's an international. It's for everybody. You know what else Guruji said? He said, there's no difference in souls, only in the ideas about ourselves that we wear. So it's all, all those identifications are superficial covering of the essential. And, we all feel feelings and suffer and have joys and things the world over, wherever you are from, whatever your culture and everything, your class, your race, it's, basically the essence is similar.
That is so true. Like we're all flesh and bone in the end.
And soul.
And soul.
Yeah, in the end, not flesh and bone, but
Oh,
still.
true.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're all flesh and that's true. Like flesh and bone in the sense that we all, like, whether it's from the physical aspect to the soul aspect, we're all the same but different. Like, and they say in Thailand,
Yeah.
same but different.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's
And
wonderful. It's wonderful that we have that connection with everybody and everything. And it's
mm,
also wonderful that we have our own flavor, you know.
mm. And I think someone wrote a question. Sorry, I didn't see the question, so I'm just scrolling through. How important is it to follow exactly a traditional yoga asana in contrast to more going with the feeling on what is right for the body?
Okay. I would say when you're beginning, there is quite a lot of almost drill, and you have to learn how to do things in a safe way. And so there's a
Mm,
certain structure about it. So you can't just do whatever you feel like, because you don't know anything when you're a beginner in the subject,
mm,
So basically, you need some guidelines, some structure to keep you safe and keep you on the
mm,
path. But I think as you get better educated in yoga, which comes through, going to a good teacher, but also through one's own sincere practice, then you get better able to make those wise judgments about adaptation or what you should do, because it's really about developing viveka, isn't it? Discrimination,
mm,
wisdom. And so, but in order to make a wise choice, you need a bit of information, you need a bit of experience. So in a way, it's both things. You have to sort of do as you're told as a beginner, and you have to learn the basics and the parameters. But then gradually, you realize absolutely each person brings something different to the party. You're bringing your state, your body, your age, where you're living, what the weather's
mm,
like, what happened yesterday, what's going to happen later. That it all is going to affect how you set about it, what injuries you've got or not got.
mm,
And so things have to be adapted. But there are parameters within which one can adapt. So something still has to qualify as a yogasana. You can't just do anything. You can't just sort of slouch in a chair and say, well, I'm sitting and that's yoga. I mean, you know, uh, so yeah, you do have to make some judgment. But the trouble is, when you're a beginner, if I think back to how I was when I was a beginner, what I feel like doing might be just lying around and not really doing much at all. I'm a bit lazy. So that what I feel like doing isn't necessarily what I should do. So
mm,
we're trying to learn and cultivate that within us of learning what we should do, and we should do that rather than what we can do. So what I can do is I can get away with being lazy, or I can get away with working too hard and being aggressive. But what I should do is something in between.
mm. And that reminds me also, I want to share with people, like in his book, Light on Yoga, if you don't, if we go into any sort of lockdown, if you're in lockdown in the world and don't know where to begin and would like this, teaching, he does go through each week, like what he gives you a practice. Like he notes all the poses you should do every day as a baseline to start. So I agree. Like, if you have no idea, you should follow a guru and that path before doing your own
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. Because otherwise, you don't know, and we all need sort of reining in from time to time, or keeping on the straight and narrow, as it were. But
Yeah.
Guruji said, a good teacher is important, and that's how I'd recommend anybody finds out about yoga. So if you want to find out about Iyengar Yoga, go to a certificated Iyengar Yoga teacher. But
Yeah,
in
that's
the absence of a good teacher being available, a good book is
mm,
better than a poor teacher, he said. So
smart.
mm. So look for a good book and study it. And
Mm.
but when somebody is available to help you, then take the help. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that
Somebody
was
good.
one of my questions actually. Where would one start if they wanted to learn specifically about Iyengar Yoga? Like, where would you find a good yoga teacher in Iyengar Yoga?
Okay, well, if you're an Iyengar Yoga teacher, we all carry a trademark. There's a little triangular logo that shows you are a genuine Iyengar teacher. So you've had the right training and your ongoing professional development and all that. And there's a regulation to that. You can't just say, "Oh, I've decided to
I'm a
be call
yoga teacher,
myself,"
yeah.
so each country pretty much in the world, or most countries, have an Iyengar Yoga association, or they're part of a group of Iyengar Yoga associations. And so on their website you will find the teachers. So very often you can just search for, according to where you're living, just search for an Iyengar Yoga teacher and then go along and see, if it's somebody you think you can learn from. I mean, there are
And many teachers.
many Iyengar Yoga teachers, good Iyengar Yoga teachers, yes.
And can you please share some, tips for someone who's new to Iyengar Yoga?
Okay, so I wrote down some sort of verbal tips, but also I thought we'll do a little bit of practical stuff, but not much. We've been
Yes.
doing this a long time now, haven't we?
You're doing
Because
really well.
I think it's important, don't assume that because we're working with the body as our instrument, that this is merely physical. It seems physical, so I've said this before, but it is actually more profound than that. This witnessive process. So the physical is a root in, and it's a foundation. And some people are happy to stick with the physical, and that's fine. If that's what you're interested in, it's very good, it's very effective, it's very safe. But if people who think it is just a physical practice don't understand the depth of it at all. I would advise you to learn Iyengar Yoga and get your information about Iyengar Yoga from an Iyengar Yoga teacher, if that's what the path you decide to take. What I mean is, don't sort of find out about Iyengar Yoga from a teacher of something else, because that doesn't make sense. Yeah. Accept that it will be hard work, but it's very rewarding, and you can still enjoy it. You can enjoy it. It's hard, but you can enjoy it. Remember, yoga is not competitive, so it does not matter a jot what anyone else can do or is doing, and it's completely irrelevant. It's about you and your progression and development. And avoid the idea that it's about flexibility, or even that flexibility helps. I mean, sometimes being flexible is a hindrance. It's about the learning, it's not about the doing or the accomplishment. And so don't feel, if you've got a stiff body, don't feel that it's not for you, or that you've got some ailment, or you're older or you're younger or whatever. It's for everybody, and there is a way of teaching everybody. Yoga is challenging for everybody sooner or later, I'd say. So be prepared for that, but also it's extremely generous. It gives you a great bounty for a very relatively little input. And of course, if you put in a lot, then your bounty is going to be more. The other thing I think that's helpful is attend regularly. So don't sort of dot around too much and just float in and float out. You can't really learn a discipline that way. And try, when you feel like it, when you feel ready for it, try to develop a regular practice. That's very important. It is about practice to a great extent. And don't be afraid to ask questions of your teacher. So a good teacher should welcome that and should give you the time and answer the questions. To somebody who's sincerely wanting to understand it, then that it should be given wholeheartedly and to help. So, and in our system, Guruji said, always as a teacher, you should always give more than you take. And I think that's a very good rule of thumb. And, that's perhaps a good way to judge a teacher, And, yeah. So, and we were thinking, I think you were also
Yeah, I was
one.
gonna ask, but if someone just asked a question, I don't know if you know Maxine Tobias. I don't know if that's a
Tobias. I've heard of her, yes.
I don't
I
know.
don't know her personally.
Okay. And when did you start? I think so. You started 24 years ago, I believe, with
No, I
Iyengar.
started teaching then. I started practicing in the late 1980s,
Wow. Okay.
which is still quite young in yoga terms, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are kind of who've been doing it for many, many, many more years than that. So yes, I'm starting to get the hang of it a bit now.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, you have more than a hang of it. You have a firm knowledge and
Wow.
understanding. To
Mm.
be able, you broke it down to me for the first time in the World Yoga Festival, and you were teaching a massive group. I thought, wow, this lady is amazing. You had such poise and concise and precise explanations of
Well, thank you.
yeah, which I really enjoyed. And speaking of demonstration, I think there's a lot of mistakes that beginner yogis make when they come to a class. And often in such a busy, group class, it's hard to hone in on these common mistakes. So can you
Mm.
please share, just from a physical, asana perspective?
Just a few little snippets to give
Yes,
the gist of it.
please.
Yeah,
Yes.
but not too long. Okay, so let me turn this around. Now, is that
Okay.
going to, does that work? No.
Yeah.
Because I set it up the other way. Can you
Oh,
see
yeah.
the?
I think I can see.
Okay, right, all right. So I've got lots of writing over my screen, so I can't really see very well. Okay.
We
So
can
one
see you
thing.
really well.
Sorry.
We can see you really well.
Great. Okay. So one thing that when we begin class, we sit often and get into this commencement state, and often people sit. It's difficult for people to sit. If we're used to sitting in chairs, often we might be sitting like this. And rather than persisting like that, a simple thing is just sit on a bit of height. Sit on some height so that you can sit up. And
Yeah,
this
that makes
lift of the spine is important.
mm.
I'm just going to keep pressing the button because it keeps going black, my screen, sorry.
That's okay. We can still see you really well, and that
Oh,
makes
can you? Okay,
yeah.
just give me a shout if I completely disappear because I'm not quite sure what's going on with my phone. So
Okay.
sitting on a bit of height helps you to relax a bit in the knees and to sit taller. So immediately your energy is uplifted, you see. Whereas if you're sitting too low and you're struggling to sit tall, you're creating tension and nobody comes to yoga to get more tense,
Yeah.
So sitting on some height, simple thing to help. The other thing I notice people often do is something like this with the hands. So they push the hands down and the shoulders and the elbows forward. I don't know if you can see where those lines are. Now again, what this does, we call this closing the chest. And what this does is it means that you are putting tension in your head and brain, which we're not trying to do, we're trying to reduce that. So if you have your hands a little higher and the slope on your elbows and the shoulders strongly roll back, we call this opening the chest, you start then to live more here, and this is kind of how you're facing the world. You're uplifting your heart, you're giving more prominence to that and keeping the head quiet. Often beginners push the head forward, you see. That means they're existing in their head and not anywhere else. And that's something we have to try to sort of deal with. And then if we stand up, another common beginner's mistake is that a beginner will say jump the arms and legs apart, for example, or they step if they need to, and they might go this wide. And there's a certain reluctance to go wide apart enough in the legs. And so some people may not go wide because they're stiff. So fair enough, gradually, little by little over time, you can start to get a little wider. But often it's the head again that's stopping us going wide. There may be a fear or an apprehension to do an unfamiliar thing. But going wide, you see, like this, what this is helping to happen is for energy to circulate more completely throughout the body. And this is important. A lot of it's about energy flow. You know? Similarly, with the arms stretching to the side, we might say, well, stretch your arms straight, and the person's kind of like this, and they think, I am straight. Subjectively, I feel straight. So relating to that question that the person asked before, you might feel this is straight. You might feel this is enough, but actually, this is straight. So when you have that second straightness, then the energy flows more. And this is important, getting sort of connected to that and inhabiting the whole body, the whole embodiment, not just being in the head. Okay? Another mistake a beginner might make, and also let me say, people often will be like this and they sincerely believe their arms are straight. So it's not that they are deliberately being disobedient or something, but they think, we think, I'm straight and I'm not. And this is part of the trouble that we have. We bring this to it, that we have distorted perceptions. So that a teacher can help to say, actually, no, that's not straight, this is straight. Now, when a beginner goes to Uttita Trikonasana, often what they'll do is, again, they're in their head. So they lead with their head. So the head comes forward. And then they're told, all right, I've got to go up. So it ends up looking something like this. Let me show sideways. So if you're in your head, very often your head comes front. And when your head comes forward, then something else has to go back, like the bottom, the hip.
Yeah.
And what it should be like, this has to be made sober, a little subdued. This has to be more leading. So it should be more like so. So the head is kept more in its place, more sober. Do you see? Rather than this. And this also happens to be, the wrong position also happens to be not so good. Whoops. For your joints and your back and all the rest of it. So physically it's not so good, but also, it's not so good for your actual yoga progress because you're just in your head. The other thing I was thinking that beginners often do is we make great demands. When you're doing a yoga pose, it's challenging, it's tough. And so what happens often is that you might hold your breath. And, so you're asked to do something really difficult. And it's really, it's hard work. And you think, oh God. And so you think, and then they're making you stay maybe for a bit. And so you grit your teeth, press your tongue, hold your breath. All of those things are not good. So this area should try to be neutral. Don't grit the teeth, don't press the tongue, and do keep breathing. Do keep breathing. So at the beginning, you can't do a lot with your breath, except just remember to keep breathing. That's enough for a beginner.
Yeah, just breathe.
The subtleties of breath and breathing. The first thing is remember to breathe. It's very important.
Yeah.
The other thing about, say, this Uttita Panachakramasana, this bent leg one, I'm going to do the other side so I don't get too lopsided.
Yeah.
Is often people do things like this. So they overbend the knee beyond the foot, and they underbend at the hip and the thigh. And so this is just to do with sort of physics and just the way we're built and what is healthy for us, but also what means it qualifies as the asana, so that you can get somehow, sooner or later, get into a true asanic state. So it should be knee over the ankle and this bend here at the hip. Do you see? So this is putting less load on, problematic load on the joints. But it also means that, when various other things happen, that one stands a chance to find some asanic state in it. Whereas if you're like this, that's not going to happen. So there are certain parameters, there are certain rights and wrongs. However, there are also permitted adaptations. So, for example, you might be here, fine, but then you've got to put your hand on the floor. Then you might go wrong and you might have to stick your head forward to do it. So better then that you put your hand on a brick or even put your arm here. this would be an acceptable adaptation, depending on your situation. But, although classically, it would be down here. You see, so there is variation is allowed, but often you need some guidance as to what to vary and how to do it safely. Something else I wanted to show is, say, forward bending, Janu Shishasana, important forward bend. And forward bends are great for soothing, quietening. Important to practice them, and they're quite difficult for a beginner. And so a beginner thinks, oh yes, I've got to touch my toes, that's what it's about, I've got to touch my toes. So they go with their hands like this, like this, like this.
Yeah.
And that's like, it becomes about that. And if you look at the side view of that, what's happening then is they're sort of going into reverse, but they're going forward from here. And it's really difficult to do that. You know, what you have to do is come forward from here. You see the difference? So then, this is healthier, but it also stands a chance to get qualified as one sooner or later as Janu Shishasana. Well, so this rather than this. So the other aspect is people will tend to think, oh yes, I've got to get my head on my leg, 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 instead of go forward and then the head goes. Do you see what I mean? This is, if you lead with your head or you lead with the wrong bit, you go astray. And this is often what beginners do, especially if you're doing a desk job or you do a lot of, you know, thought stuff in your daily life. Often you can be really stuck in this area, and this energy has to be allowed to descend a little, you know. And finally, Shavasana, relaxation. People may not realise, but one of the things Guruji shared that people didn't realise before was the idea that if you lie with your head and neck on a pillow, it facilitates relaxation. And so a folded blanket. So this is very important for quietening, quick quietening, and there are other things you can do as well. But often I've noticed people use sometimes really thick pillows, and people sleep on really thick pillows too sometimes. And what that does, if I just show you, if you use too much, actually what you're doing, you're pushing your head up, you're tucking your chin in, it's creating head tension. So this pillow is important, but it has to be just big enough. So it supports your head and your neck, but doesn't go underneath your shoulders. This is very helpful for Shavasana. Now if you're older and your neck is getting more stiff, you may need to roll up a little bit extra just for your neck bit to keep, you know, older women may need to do that. That will be more supportive. And the final thing I wanted to share, when you come out of Shavasana, people sometimes are just they want to kind of leap up. It's really important not to do that for your own, you've got to have enough self-respect for your own nervous system that you don't jolt it or, you know, jerk it. So when you come up, it should be very smooth, so you let your eyes open slowly. I wouldn't be doing Shavasana with one arm on a mat and one not on a mat, so get rid of that. So you slowly let your eyes open, but you don't rush to engage with the world. You maintain a sort of internal orientation, and then you slowly and smoothly rest your arms, and slowly bend your legs, and then roll to the side and stay there. So there's a slow process to this, and then you come up and you lift your head, last of all. So there's a respect to that which is not disturbing. Very important, because Shavasana is the most delicious asana, you know. We all like to do the rest and the relaxation at the end, so then don't spoil it by, you know, coming out in a rough way. You know. So those were the thoughts I wanted to share, just very simply.
Oh, thank you so much. Those were brilliant from the very start. What I thought when you said we live in our heads, that is so true, even with people working on computers, on phones, and the posture naturally is slouched. So
Absolutely.
that energy has to move. And by creating that posture most of the day, we're like stuck in our heads so much.
Absolutely.
Having experienced that as well, and I'm also trying to like not stay on my phone or not even get have too many technology things distracting me, so my energy flows in a way all day, not only when I do yoga.
Yeah, it's like that that is it an emoji or a meme? I don't know what these things are, but it's a picture of a head and it's exploding. That's what we're like all the time, we're pushing energy up, and where's it going to go? The valve has to be released. It has to be allowed to come out of the head and not get stuck. The traffic's got to flow.
And I think someone just asked, does Iyengar talk about the self residing in the chest?
Yes. The self with a capital S, as in the soul or the seer, being somewhere behind the heart region, somewhere around there. Yes. So that's sort of that identification of self there is important, and less here.
That is such a game changer for me recently, and I think Iyengar's just reconfirmed it. It's just living from the heart rather than the head.
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying before about this traditional approach. It's a radical approach in some ways, Iyengar Yoga and what Iyengar did, but it's also traditional because it's connected to that heart of yoga, in the heart of yoga and the heart of the person is what it's about.
And in most of the asanas as well, like maybe not so like rabbit pose, or I don't know if they do that but our hearts are lifted, even in a back bend, the sternum is rising up and not crouch. We're not having that kyphotic chest
Absolutely.
or body position.
Yeah, it's essential that upliftment, and that affects us. We absolutely know, this is verifiable, that when we are uplifted here, we feel better, we feel more positive. You can't be depressed if your sternum is uplifted, and so we all understand at a very basic level that the mind and the body are interconnected, for sure. And so, we're working on sort of, you might say, more peripheral aspects of mind, but we're trying to get more profound in that touch.
Yeah, and someone and Chiwai's also asked, what is meant by sober? I'm not sure what in relation to what is meant by sober.
Sober. Well, in the sense of not sober, in the sense of quiet, not intoxicated, not agitated, not overexcited, but calm, steady, balanced. That's what I would mean by it.
Okay, thank you. And I really enjoyed the aspect of awakening from Shavasana, like self-respect to one's own nervous system. And not having the pillow too high. I know sometimes I have like 3 pillows when I sleep.
Yeah, and it kind of gets in the way. Although we're trying to sort of empty out energy from the head, somehow by lifting it up like that, it stops that, because it creates a sort of a blockage in the throat, you see. And you've got an important chakra here, and your thyroid, thyroid. So you need to, this area has to be spread and soft. There is a key area, also the abdomen.
Yes, that is such a great point. And what I can infer from all this information and maybe communicate to everyone is it's such an energetic practice. And by moving your body in these shapes, it's not how deep you can go. And like you said, it doesn't matter how flexible you are. It's with moving within the framework of your ability and your body to produce an energetic shape a shape that creates a certain type of energy. It fosters a certain type of energy within your being so it can flow and, yeah, create.
And chemical changes that occur also.
Yes, yes.
So yes, it's
For the mind as well, like to combat depression, you can move your body in certain ways. It's like if you're suffering, and I think even in his book, he says if you're suffering from problems with the eye or digestion, or you can do certain postures to help the flow of energy in those areas to combat whatever
yeah,
dis-ease there is.
yeah. It's wonderful, and that's really empowering. You know, that's one thing I really like about yoga. It's empowering. It's,
Mm,
you know, it gives you something to do, to work on yourself. You're not just a victim of things, and you're not just reliant on other people. You can become self-reliant,
exactly.
dependent on your own inner resources. You know.
Yes, and that's what in my journey in my life right now is I am cultivating or more understanding how I can be more of a source of my own energy
Mm, yeah.
than relying elsewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then, yeah, and that's great then. If you can do that, then, you know, the world's your oyster.
I know, I feel like it's a superpower.
So then you have to use your power wisely, that's all.
Yes, with great, like it's Spider-Man. What does it say? With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So be
So,
careful.
yeah, and I do believe that, trying to be kind and humble and move forward with good intentions is key.
Yes, yeah,
No,
absolutely. I think
yeah.
kindness is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's a Kendrick Lamar song? I don't know. You probably haven't heard of it, but it said, "Sit down, be humble." That's what it says. Like
Well,
if you ever get too caught up in, your own hype, you're like, "Sit down, be humble." I'm like, yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, bend down low. You know,
Yeah.
it's the Bob Marley song. Yeah, it's if you sit down, it makes you more quiet. I think if you stand up,
Mm.
you know, it can make you more.
And also child's pose where our head's on the floor. It's
Mm,
almost very like, it's very humbling, or even bowing down with your head, in Surya Namaskar. It's always like, yes, I can rise
yeah,
above, but also when I bend down, I'm very humble and grounding myself to the floor. So you move with grace and
yeah.
confidence, but not arrogance.
It's that reverence, and that's in puja as well. Is that, you know, prostration, and because you're prostrating to God or divinity, you know, whatever, however you conceptualize things, but you're also bowing down to the earth, aren't you? So it's very
Mm.
pertinent to the current times, and we're thinking all about the climate and everything. That idea that you respect the earth, you know, you bow down to there. And you know, there is a Hindu or Vedic prayer, isn't there? When you get up in the morning, sorry, the screen's gone a bit funny. When you get up in the morning, that you, the first thing you do is you sort of say to Mother Earth, thank you for letting me step on you, and apologies, you know, I'm going to
Mm.
stand on you. And I like that kind of, you know, that reverence, and that seeing that you're part of a whole system, and not just me, you know, but it's like, and it's not just humans, but it's the whole thing of creation is
Mm.
coexisting, you know.
And I think this morning even, try to start with a bit of gratitude. And I was actually really grateful for even the bed I had. So I'm like, thank you. So I have a bed to
Yeah,
sleep on, then lay my pillow, lay my,
I get that. I get
you
that.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Definitely.
first 10 years of my life, I slept on the floor with my family in one room in Dubai. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was, I didn't even, when we came to Australia, I was like, oh, we have a bed in my dad's sister's house. I was just not used to it. It felt so odd. So even now, and I think it was such a humbling experience being had that for the first 10 years of my life, sleeping on the floor, whether I
Yeah.
mentally realize it, but subconsciously, it's like, oh, I've, very like, okay, humbling
Interesting.
and being
I've
nurtured by the
noticed
earth.
that. Yeah, yeah. It's I know what you mean, because I think it's nicer to sleep on the floor, actually. I think it's nicer to sit on the floor. than on
Mm.
chairs. But we've got these sort of social niceties that we're supposed to
Mm.
provide sofas if people come round, and you know, sleep on a bed. And if you just gave somebody a mat on the floor, they might be slightly offended. But actually, I think that's some of the best night's sleep I've had, been on a mat on the floor. Yeah. So yeah, funny.
When you went to Pune in India, did you sleep on the floor or on the bed?
No, we have a bed
Oh,
in.
you have a bed.
I usually get an apartment these days, and there's a
Okay.
bed. But I have slept. I did the first time I went to Pune. I stayed in the ashram, and even there you had a bed, but you shared a room, and a very simple bed, like a cot,
Yeah,
and, a hard bed. I
a
prefer
hard
that.
bed.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And oh my God, thank you so much. This has been such an insightful interview from all levels of psychology, right down to the alignment and physical practice and energetic as well.
Well, thank you
Information.
for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And can you please share before you go, how the audience can get in contact with you and attend your classes?
Okay, so I'm mostly teaching online still at the moment, although I do yoga days here and there. My website is Yoga with Kirsten, KIRSTEN, .co.uk, and I'm on Instagram at Kirsten Agar Ward.
Yes.
So you should be able to find me on Facebook, Yoga with Kirsten. So yes, I hope to see some of you somewhere or other.
Do people should email you as well? Would that
They
be?
can email me on office at yogawithkirsten.co.uk. Yeah, so.
And are you having any upcoming yoga days or
I am. I'm teaching, what am I doing? This Saturday, actually, I'm teaching a yoga, just a morning near Bath, 2.5 hours. Then a week on Saturday, I'm teaching a yoga day near Taunton, Bishopswood. That's a whole day, a week on Saturday. And then I'm teaching a thing.
is it a whole day
A whole
on that?
day of yoga, yeah. So it's 10, I think it's 10 till 4. You get a break.
Okay.
Get a lunch break, and it's not all hard work. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
balanced practice.
Yeah.
And I teach a retreat once a year or more sometimes in the Yorkshire Dales in a beautiful place called the Meditation Centre. Very special.
Any dates for the
I think that's going to be, I haven't fixed it for next year, but quite possibly either June or September. And I teach here and there where I'm asked to teach. I usually go. Sometimes I haven't been teaching abroad, obviously, lately, but sometimes
yeah.
abroad too. So I'm happy to, if somebody wants to invite me, I'm happy
Oh
to
yes.
think
I
about
mean, you
it.
never know. If I have my own studio one day or have my
Yeah,
own place, you are welcomed. I will give
okay.
you a luxurious bed.
It's a date. Oh, I don't know, a mat on the floor.
A mat on the floor. That's easy. You're done.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll sleep next to you with a mat on the floor.
Okay.
And
So
all these dates that you're teaching, is that on your website that
they're
people?
all on the website, yeah, under events, and more are added all the time. So, and as I say, I do teach weekly classes of asana and pranayama online, and people are welcome to join. Obviously, if you've got a bit of experience, if you haven't, just write to me and I can advise you what would be a good class to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge that you've learned and experienced. You've experienced this over a decent chunk of life and dedicated your time to studying it and now sharing it. So I really am grateful for you being here and sharing these nuggets of wisdom from an Iyengar Yoga perspective, right? Which is,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
oh, you're most welcome and would love to see you soon again. Hopefully one day I can come to Bath and take your class in person and
That would be great.
yeah.
I look forward to meeting you again. Yeah,
Yes,
somewhere
yes,
or other.
yes. It would be my pleasure, honestly. I would love that. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. Cheers. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.